Alright, so today I'm going to discuss the Declaration of Independence, and it seems to be universally adored. Right? It's certainly one of the greatest political documents ever, maybe the most influential ever. But it has its critics, right? And the first set of critics are the people who say that the founders didn't really mean it about human equality, right? They were just trying to set themselves equal to the British in order to justify the revolution, right? Now, it's a pretty silly critique, and Abraham Lincoln deals with it in his Dred Scott speech. You can check that out. But I want to deal with the philosophical criticism in this video, right? And most of it is going to be like explaining this to you, and then at the end, I'm going to resolve it, right, and save the Declaration of Independence, right? This is my approach to saving the Declaration of Independence. So I don't think the video will be that long, but most of it is just going to be explaining criticisms. And so the modern criticism is a philosophical criticism of the Enlightenment, right? Because the basis of the Declaration of Independence is so-called Enlightenment philosophy, and the idea of natural rights, that we have rights by nature. So eventually, the whole idea that we have rights, it became, it permeated political thought so much that it morphed into this modern view, right? Like like the idea of rights kept changing and changing, and then eventually, the belief came to be that all rights are conventional, right? That we don't have natural rights, that we get our rights from the state, right? That it's the power of the state that gives us our rights. That's the idea of conventional rights. That's the modern view. That's the modern criticism of the Enlightenment. So last century, there was a guy named Leo Strauss who came along, and he tried to come up with a way to save us from this modern criticism of Enlightenment philosophy. And so what he did was he returned to ancient thought, to pre-Enlightenment thought, right, to the ancient Greeks, and so he tried to save the idea of natural morality or natural right. So his view is still similarly a criticism of natural rights, because the bottom line is, when you study history, it should become clear that the idea of rights was introduced as a rationalization of the bourgeois in order to justify their possession of private property. Right? So there certainly is an element of the rights doctrine that it was a ruling class trying to preserve their power, right? And so people have discovered this, and they've concluded, they've gone too far and said, oh, all ideas are just a result of, power plays, what have you. And so Leo Strauss tried to find a way around that, and he returned to ancient Greece. And so what we talk about as Straussians is we talk about justice, right? We talk about what is right. We don't talk about rights, we talk about right. Because what happened with the bourgeois was, in order to justify their ownership of property, they literally said that they own what is right. They have property rights. Whereas actually, what is right belongs to the situation, right? No one owns what is right. Okay, because in order to discuss what is right, you have to discuss all the particular details of the situation that you're describing. So ultimately, morality comes down to situational ethics in the best sense, right? Not in a sinister situational ethics sense, but in the best sense, morality comes down to the particular situation. Right? There aren't any general rules that are always right to apply, which is what's supposed by rights, because the idea of rights is really just a euphemism for general rules. So, this kind of sums up the criticism of the Declaration of Independence. But Leo Strauss also discovered a tradition of, communication in general, but especially of political and philosophical communication, whereby, people would have a public message and a private message for the people who look closer, right? The public message is what's known as exoteric, and the private message is what's known as esoteric, right? So there's a particular school of Straussianism, which is West Coast Straussianism, and I'm a West Coast Straussian, that attempts to look at the founders and, just all speech in general, but the founders in Enlightenment philosophy and ask, was this bourgeois rationalization just their public message? Like, did they have a more private message that actually describes reality better? And I am thankful that I can say today, you're on YouTube, that there is such a message in the Declaration of Independence. Right? It's the fourth sentence. Everyone loves all the beginning of it. People stop reading by the fourth sentence, but the fourth sentence goes, "Prudence indeed will dictate that governments long established should not be changed for light and transient causes." Right? So it begins, prudence indeed, right? I love the rhythm of that phrase, prudence indeed. Now, prudence is the idea of doing the right thing at the right time. Right? Prudence is situational ethics. Right? So there's all these, demands from society for justice that the Declaration begins with, and the right to revolution, and then it gets to prudence indeed, right? So, that is the classical part. That's the most sober part of the Declaration of Independence. All of the advice of the Declaration of Independence hinges on that sentence, which I refer to with those two words, prudence indeed, right? Situational ethics, right? The right thing at the right time. Justice, right? I call it justitarianism. So, anyway, there you go. You can now go on and consider finding all these secret messages in your American history books now. And this is just the first one of a series I'm going to do for Independence Day this year. So thank you very much.